Good evening. This is Wednesday, the 20th of October. It is the year 2021. And this is Golden Nugget Nation, questions and answers. My name is Gary Jenkins, and I am so pleased and happy to have this time to share with you some of the thoughts that have come in from people. And I think it's very interesting that the questions I received this week are from entrepreneurs who have gone through tremendous mindset issues. Now, let me just give you an idea. A lot of people who listen to this broadcast or watch this video are not people who grew up in poverty. They had a level of things. They had a roof over their head. They had food on their plate. They grew up with the idea that it could be possible to be something different than you are. You could go to school, you could learn, but that was kind of like the general course. That was what I grew up with. I grew up with this idea that I could be whatever I decided I could be. But at the same time, I was getting counter messages like, you're retarded, you are unteachable in the educational system, you can't learn anything. And so you can aspire to be like a ditch digger, or in my case, a cowboy. But I've got people who have written in and said, look, I grew up in a situation where it was abject poverty. The people who were the haves were as poor as us, just that they had a little bit more. And then there was no hope. Nobody had hope. Perhaps the best you could be is just like everybody else. Or maybe you might marry somebody whose family had been in some form of criminal activity and were doing better than everybody else, and you could be a beneficiary of past criminal activity. But there was no hope. Not only that, but one of the people told me that their parents divorced sometime in their infancy. And the area that they grew up in, the rule of thumb was a child in a single household, if it was a girl, only had one option in life, and that was to be a prostitute. And therefore, people would call you a whore at age 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age, beginning the programming for what your future calling in life was supposed to be. And it didn't matter how bright or intelligent, how articulate, how creative, how artistic, or anything that child was. This was what was being told them. And when they start to become a young woman at age 12, 13, 14, it just increases. This is all you'll ever be. That's all you can achieve. You can't go any further. Don't try, on and on. So, okay, I think I hopefully have painted a picture of where people are coming from. Now, one of these individuals actually had a conversation with me this week where we were talking about how they began the road to being an entrepreneur 3 years ago from nothing whatsoever. Part of what happened was they were able to leave that environment and go to a medium environment for a few years where they learned that they were bright, intelligent, capable people, and that they could sell things, whether it was property, pillows, blankets, medical supplies, whatever else, but they could sell. And they just needed an equal opportunity. And one of the things that they were fighting against is the fact was that they were a woman. And so therefore they were not thought of as highly as they should have been. And they happened to move to the country I'm living in, which is the United Kingdom, where they started from nothing, but they had an idea, they had a dream, they had a vision. They were willing to put in the work and reinvest their money, as little as it was, every month into their business. And they worked hard, they worked through problems, they solved issues, they took on every challenge as an opportunity. And here they are now, 3 years later, and they are wealthier than they have ever been in their life. And that is a marvelous thing. And they were sitting there saying, you know, growing up, I couldn't see being anything but poor. And something happened after I left my hometown, went to this middle ground, and I discovered I had talents and skills and abilities that were innate to me. And because I had those, I could be something more than just poor. But I never thought I could be financially okay or wealthy or progressing. But here I am now, 3 years later, in a different country, starting from absolutely zero, no job, no income, no prospects, no anything. And I have built up my own business to the point that I have excelled every dream I ever had of what was possible for me. And now my dreams have just expanded. My wealth identification levels have increased, etc. She says, I just cannot understand how important having that mindset was, how important it is to tell children from the very beginning that they can have and achieve whatever they want to have, that there is no limit, that you are not set at birth where you are going to fit in the economic scales of the world. And we all know stories of people who were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, or who grew up with privilege and title and family with great wealth. But for some reason, they just are in poverty in their mind and in their spirit and in their soul. Now, I was talking to another person today where I was saying, you know, this is what I'm thinking about talking about tonight. What are your thoughts on it? And this is what she wrote to me. She says, I don't know really what to say about being an entrepreneur. She says, except that if you do what you love and put a piece of your soul while enjoying the process itself, success will always find you. Do you see what the point is? It is what is going on between your ears. Now, those people who have followed me and know about my background, I was once a sex therapist in a former life. And we used to tell people the biggest sex organ you have is between your ears. Well, let me tell you, it's true about being a success organ as well. Your biggest success organ is between your ears, because you have to get rid of all of that, dare I say, bullshit you've been telling yourself, that people have been telling you your entire life. You were born to win. That's all there is to it. You have been endowed by your creator at the very beginning of your life, which was conception, to win. We all know about that great race. Only one could get the egg. Only one could get the prize. And you are the end product of that race. Why should that be the last success of your life? It certainly isn't. It doesn't matter what people tell you in your life about whether you're poor, you're not very intelligent, you're not very bright, you're not very attractive, you're not very... Everybody has something that they need to overcome. Everybody. And while we go through that process of overcoming, we have to get rid of all of this toxic, internal, intellectual mess that came from the people we were supposed to love, trust, believe, accept, go to for succor and comfort. The people that we were told, these are your teachers. These are the people who will help you how to navigate in life. Oftentimes, these navigators actually have an agenda because society needs so many people to be drones, and society needs so many people to be workers, and it needs so many people to be scientists, and it needs so many people to do it. And we start to separate people at very early ages. Oh, we put this group into the accelerated class. Oh, we give these people advanced placement mathematics or advanced placement biology or advanced placement English or whatever it is that we're doing. We're already trying to separate them because these are the ones that we expect to be successful. These other people are going to be the factory workers, the truck drivers, whatever it is in the world. And the truth of the matter is, you are not what people select you to be. You are what you select yourself to be. Think of Henry Ford. Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile. Henry Ford was basically kind of a blacksmith, mechanical kind of a guy. I believe the first thing he built that would have been called a car today, he called it something like the octocopter. And he built it inside of a garage and built the car too big. He couldn't get it out of the garage. But he called it the octocopter, but he built it. But in the building of the process, he kept thinking there's got to be a better way to build these things. There's got to be a faster way to build these things. And then he came across the idea about what if we just had people who were trained to do certain jobs and do them very efficiently and very well, and had a couple guys pull the car to them. They would do it, then they would move to the next station and move it to the next station. And they found that instead of just having a car in one place and having people moving around to work on it and then taking up the tools and going back, just having different workstations, the car could be built much faster, much more quickly. This led to what you call the production line. And, you know, Ford got to the point where he had a car every minute coming off his assembly lines, and the rest is history. The Model A was just all over the world. In fact, I live in the UK, and I recently attended a hobbyist convention where everybody was bringing in their old cars just to kind of show them off. And there were 5 Model A's there that I just could not believe, you know, all built in the 1920s. I was just like shocked that these Model A's were just sitting there in a suburb of London, in an open field with hundreds and hundreds of cars, most of them British made, but they were sitting there, 5 of them, and they were beautiful. They were immaculate. They were well preserved and just kind of like a joy. I remember as a kid seeing Model A's and people driving them back and forth. And so to see them here, you know, like 60 years later was just like a real thrill to me to actually lay eyes on them. I dare not touch them, you know, respect, you know, kind of a thing. But here's the thing. Henry Ford was not a gifted man. He wasn't bright. In fact, he made so much money at one point that back in the 20s, he was put on trial for being stupid. I mean, that isn't what they put it on, but they were just saying the man that isn't as bright as the world would want has all this money, has all this power, has all this, and so we're going to ask him questions. And that's what happened. They kind of asked him, like, what's the capital of Iceland, and what's the depth of the Marianas Trench, and how high is Mount Everest, and how long is the longest river, and name it. Anyways, they just went down this list, and Henry Ford didn't know the answers. He just couldn't give answers. And they said, "You see, Your Honor, Mr. Ford is not a bright man. He's not intelligent enough to have all this money." And Henry Ford says, "Wait a minute." He says, "On my desk, I have a row of 50 buttons." He says, and connected to that button is a guy who will answer the phone that has a PhD who's working for me. If I want to know anything about anything, I can hit one of those buttons and I'll be told the answer. I don't have to know this information. I just have to know how to retrieve the information when I need it. And he says, and that's what these scientists do for me. Now, you see, I don't think anybody ever told Henry Ford when he was a kid that he was the brightest bulb on the tree. But Henry Ford along the way learned that he may not be the brightest bulb on the tree, but he certainly knows how to get information from a lot of different bright lights. And this is the same thing that we go through ourselves. We have to learn to trust that we have been gifted with the intelligence to go after our dream, to chase it tenaciously. And along the way, we're not in competition. We're more in collaboration. We're finding people who have strengths, talents that compensate for our weaknesses to help us to get where we're at. It doesn't mean that we're bringing them into our business. It doesn't mean that they are a segment of our empire. Sometimes we're just renting what they know. Sometimes it's just buying a computer program that can do something so much more efficiently, quicker, better than what we can do on our own. Sometimes it's just going out to an organization that outsources specific tasks that you need. And they're all over the internet. I don't want to say any names because I don't want anybody to think I'm giving an endorsement to anybody. But do your due diligence, find them, they're out there. Sometimes the cost is like so economical and such a time saver for you, you don't have to do it all. You don't have to invent it all. Everybody needs to be coached along the way. Don't be afraid to spend some money on good coaching, good quality coaching. I would not suggest that you go out and find somebody who says, last week I couldn't spell coach and this week I are one. That's a problem. Stay away from it. But go out and find people who can help you, who have been there. Remember, a mentor is only somebody who knows how to do something you don't know how to do. Doesn't mean they know the rest of the process. They just know the one thing you need to know. And this is what I think these two women are basically telling me. When you grow up in a small town, really small town, where people are not living in an atmosphere that there's hope, that nothing will ever be better than what you currently have. In fact, most likely it will be worse. That is really an environment that doesn't breed entrepreneurial spirit. And you have to get out of that environment. And so if you're one of these people who's living in this you can't do it, you won't do it, nobody believes you, etc. environments. And that is what your environment is telling you all the time. And in your heart and in your soul, you're saying, I can do this. Maybe you need to go to someplace else where at least you're not going to have to be fighting that too. Because people will sabotage you. I used to work a lot in substance abuse. And this was not an uncommon story where a man or a woman would stop drinking or stop using drugs or stop doing something that needed to be stopped in their life. And they would leave treatment and they would go home and they would be living life differently. They would not be drinking or using drugs or anything. And then maybe 2-3 months later, they might come home and on the table would be maybe their favorite alcohol, their favorite wine, maybe even a syringe and some substance, where the other partner would say, you know, you've done really well. And I thought maybe you should just have a little reward, a little break. This is what we call sabotage. Because what usually will happen is the person is still weak. They've been doing all these different processes that they have been going through, trying to elevate themselves to get them above this. But when you put the temptation right before them, and then you lovingly say, here you go, have at it. I'm so proud of you, you've done so well. People collapse. They give in because they've been sabotaged. Their own thinking switches immediately. Yeah, you're right. You've done so well this last 4 months. You should, yeah, it's not going to hurt this once. Get away from those who sabotage you, or identify with them that they are sabotaging you and ask them to become your ally so that you can get a new perspective from them, that you can get their support and their encouragement, which is really what you want. I don't know an entrepreneur out there who doesn't want support and encouragement and a bit of a kick in the butt when you start to get into that self-pity mode. And it does come for entrepreneurs when you wonder, like, how in the world do I get around this impediment? I was just talking with an entrepreneur who is into the podcasting like myself. I love doing the podcast. And he was just telling me about how he now has hit a roadblock. The roadblock being that when he decided to create his podcast, he picked a name that he kind of thought had some sizzle and some pizzazz for his podcast. He did a search around the planet, didn't find anybody on any of the platforms that had that name specifically. But he's now been informed that somebody in a place where his podcast is being heard has been operating under that name, doing a radio program, has been operating under that name that uses that program to be a podcast for about 3 years now. Now, here's the upshot from that. This guy who's got the radio program, who's got the podcast, only has 300 listeners. The person that came to me says, I've got 10,000 listeners around the world, and all of a sudden I'm being sued because I'm using this guy's name and etc. And I just asked him, I said, did you register the name? He says, no. Did this guy register the name? I don't know. Find out. See, I'm not an expert in law. I'm not an expert in things, but I pretty much ensure if the other guy hasn't registered the name, and if my guy registers the name first, there might be a different view, but I told him go seek legal advice. And that's what we all have to do. You have to go out and get the best advice you can afford. You don't have to know it all. You don't have to do it all if you have the means not to do the parts you don't like. And as the second person I quoted today said, and you do it with pleasure. You do it with joy. Put your soul into it and do it with joy. You will get there. You'll get the end result. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be difficult or painful. But you do have to put in the effort. You have to do it with joy and happiness and thanksgiving. Gratitude is so important to getting us to where we're going to end up. And as I was talking about the first person who grew up in this hopeless environment, the one thing that comes clear in every conversation I have is she is so happy and grateful now that she is chasing her dream, that people are coming to her. She was just telling me the other day that she walked into a train station in London. She does TikTok podcasts, and she was just actually talking to somebody on the phone, and somebody thought she was making a TikTok podcast, and he kind of bombed it because they were big fans from another country where they see her. They couldn't believe that they actually saw this woman. Said, you know, you're like the most famous person in London in our community. Everybody knows who you are. Well, there you go. Another success. A little indicator that you're attracting an audience, that people know who you are, that they are stunned if they bump into you. You're a celebrity in their viewpoint. And they are also helping you find more buyers who are going to want to buy from you. Because remember, entrepreneur, people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. The big three: know, like, and trust. Let them get to know you. Let your personality shine so that they learn to like you. And always do what you say you will. Let your yes be yes, and let your no be no, so they will always trust you. And that's it this week. I hope you got something out of it. I hope this was worthwhile for you. Thank you so much. And that's all from me. Hope to catch you on the next recording of Golden Nugget Nation.